The illusion of effort. Why Taoists refuse to fight life. We live in a world obsessed with effort. We glorify the grind, worship the hustle, and romanticize the struggle. From motivational speeches to social media mantras, we've been conditioned to believe that the harder we push, the more we'll get. That life rewards the striver, the warrior, the one who never sleeps or stops. But what if that entire paradigm is broken? What if the idea that success comes from struggle is not a universal truth, but a cultural illusion? What if the very effort we celebrate is the thing pulling us further from peace, from clarity, and even from real success? This is exactly where Taoism enters like a silent breeze, soft, unseen, but utterly transformative. Taoists didn't just reject effort, they saw it as a sign that something was already going wrong. And that radical insight flips everything we've been taught on its head. Imagine this, a river flowing down a mountain. It doesn't scream, it doesn't force, it doesn't stop to question the terrain. It simply moves around rocks, through crevices, over ledges. It adapts, it yields, and yet it carves valleys, feeds forests, and shapes entire landscapes. Taoists saw this image as more than poetic, it was a model for life. The Tao, or the way, isn't something you fight for. It's something you align with. And the moment you begin to fight life to resist what is, you've already stepped out of harmony. You've already lost.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But here's the twist. This isn't passivity. It's not laziness or indifference. It's intelligence. It's mastery. It's the realization that the world doesn't bend through force, it bends through flow. Laozi, the legendary author of the Tao Te Ching, said it like this: the softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest. That's not a metaphor, that's a principle. Life isn't conquered by control, it's navigated by surrender. But not the weak kind of surrender, the kind that quits. I'm talking about conscious surrender. The kind that sees reality clearly and doesn't waste energy resisting what already is. Let me ask you something. How many times in your life have you pushed, forced, or obsessed over something only to watch it slip further away? How often has your anxiety about an outcome made that outcome even less likely? That's the illusion of effort. We think we're being productive, but we're really just tightening the knot. Taoists understood this deeply. They saw that when we align with the natural flow of things, outcomes happen with ease. Not because we did nothing, but because we did only what was necessary, and nothing more. This is the concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action, but more accurately described as effortless action. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing everything in its right time, in its right measure, in its right way. It's about removing ego, urgency, and control from the equation. Think of a master martial artist. They don't flail or force. Their movements are precise, minimal, and powerful because they act in harmony with their opponent's energy, not against it. That's Wu Wei, and it applies to everything: relationships, careers, creativity, even healing. Here's where Taoism gets even more profound. It's not just saying don't fight life. It's saying that life itself is not a fight. The universe is not out to get you. But it's not testing you. It's not a battlefield. It's a dance, a rhythm. And your job isn't to conquer it, it's to hear the music and move with it. That's why Taoists lived close to nature. Not because they were primitive, but because nature is the ultimate teacher of flow. The seasons don't rush. The trees don't stress. The moon doesn't worry if it's waxing or waning. Everything unfolds without effort. So why don't we? Because we've been taught to mistrust stillness. We've been taught that if we're not struggling, we're not growing. But Taoism sees that as a tragic misunderstanding. Struggle doesn't always mean growth. Sometimes it means misalignment. It means you're swimming upstream when the current was trying to take you somewhere better all along. But you couldn't let go. You couldn't stop trying to control what was never yours to control. So here's the question: what would your life look like if you stopped forcing it? What would happen if you trusted the unfolding? This doesn't mean you won't act. It means your actions will become cleaner, sharper, less about fear, more about clarity, less about proving something, more about expressing something. But you'll stop chasing things out of desperation and start allowing things out of resonance. And that shift changes everything. You begin to move like the river. Quietly, persistently, without struggle, but with unstoppable strength. And maybe that's the greatest paradox of all. That the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying so hard. Wu Wei and the Art of Unforced Power, how letting go becomes the ultimate strength. If you've ever watched a cat land gracefully from a high shelf, or seen a leaf spiral effortlessly to the ground, you've witnessed power without force. Wu Wei in motion. There's an elegance to it, a kind of invisible intelligence flowing through things that never needed to be taught how to act. The cat doesn't calculate angles. The leaf doesn't resist the air. They move in harmony with the forces around them, not against them. Taoists looked at these seemingly mundane moments and saw the deepest truths of existence hidden in plain sight. Power, they realized, is not about domination. True power is about congruence with reality. And the most dangerous thing a human being can do is confuse control with strength. We've been trained, since childhood, to believe that strength is resistance. That we must grit our teeth, dig in, and crush our goals. But Taoism quietly whispers something far more radical. Real strength is in not resisting at all. It's not about being passive or weak. It's about becoming so attuned to the rhythm of life that you no longer need to fight it. You simply understand it, and by understanding it, you move with it. That's Wu Wei. Not inaction, but the highest form of action, one that comes from alignment rather than effort. But to live this way, you have to let go. And letting go, for most of us, feels like death. Letting go of control feels like losing. Letting go of expectations feels like surrendering our dreams. Letting go of effort feels like giving up. But Taoism flips all of this inside out. It says, you were never in control to begin with. The river was always moving, with or without your permission. Your attempts to control were just illusions, weights you carried for no reason. And the moment you release them, something extraordinary happens. You start to feel lighter, quieter, sharper. Your actions become intuitive. Your responses become fluid. You stop reacting from panic and start responding from presence. This is the secret of unforced power. It's not about being loud, dominant, or aggressive. It's about being clear. When you stop trying to control life, you begin to perceive it more accurately. You move from a place of awareness instead of reactivity. And in that awareness, your actions carry a different weight. They're not scattered. They're not desperate. They cut like a blade, not because they were forced, but because they were precise. That's what Wu Wei teaches us. That doing less, when done in harmony, achieves more. But this way of life requires something even more difficult than discipline. It requires trust. Not blind optimism, but deep trust in the process of life itself. Trust that things unfold as they must, that timing matters, that sometimes the best action is no action. And think about how much energy we waste resisting what simply is. We resist aging, we resist change, we resist uncertainty, we resist silence. But what happens when we stop resisting? What opens up when we simply allow? Take water, for example, Taoism's ultimate metaphor. Water doesn't fight obstacles, it flows around them. It doesn't shout, it nourishes quietly. It doesn't try to be seen, yet it shapes mountains. And in its softness, its flexibility, lies its invincibility. You can break a rock, you can't break water. That's what Laozi meant when he said, "Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water." Yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. What would your life look like if you became like water? Not passive, but receptive. Not weak, but fluid. Not aimless, but adaptable. This doesn't mean you won't face difficulty. Taoism never denies the existence of pain or adversity. But it teaches that suffering often arises not from the events themselves, but from our refusal to adapt to them, but from our insistence that life be other than it is. We suffer because we cling. We suffer because we demand. We suffer because we try to force a rhythm that was never ours to conduct. But when we begin to move in sync with the Tao, suffering transforms. It becomes a teacher, not a punishment. It becomes a signal, not a sentence. Even chaos becomes comprehensible when you stop trying to control it and start listening to it. So here's a difficult question. What are you forcing right now in your life? Is it a relationship that no longer flows? A career path that drains your spirit? A version of yourself that no longer fits? What would happen not if you quit, but if you stopped forcing? If you stopped pushing and started listening? If you traded anxiety for awareness? We rarely ask these questions because we're afraid of what we might find. But that fear is the gateway. That silence is the space where truth begins to speak. And when it does, you'll realize something profound. You were never meant to fight life. You were meant to dance with it. The hidden violence of ambition, how overexertion destroys peace and clarity. Ambition is one of the most praised qualities in our culture. We raise children to be ambitious. We celebrate people who made it against all odds, who climbed the ladder, who built empires from nothing. Ambition is the engine of modern life. We're told to want more, to do more, to become more, and to never, under any circumstance, settle. But Taoism looks at ambition through a completely different lens. Not as a virtue, but as a potential vice. Not because it leads to failure, but because it often leads to a kind of violence, one that's subtle, internal, and devastatingly overlooked. The violence of overexertion. The violence of always being somewhere other than here. The violence of believing that who you are now is never enough. Ambition, when left unchecked, becomes a form of self-rejection. It whispers that peace must be postponed until the goal is met, until the money is made, the body is perfected, the dream is fulfilled. And in that whisper is a curse. You are not there yet. And because you are not there, you cannot rest. You cannot trust. You cannot simply be. This is the root of modern anxiety, not the presence of danger, but the constant inner command to push, to improve, to conquer. Taoists saw this as madness. Why? Because it divorces you from the present moment, the only place where life actually happens. Think about it. How much of your mental energy is spent chasing a future that doesn't exist yet? How often do you sacrifice sleep, joy, or health in the name of making it? And even when you do reach a milestone, how long does the satisfaction really last? A few days? An hour? The moment fades and the treadmill continues. That's the hidden violence of ambition. It never lets you off the hook. It keeps moving the goalpost. It tells you that peace is a reward, not a birthright, that you must earn your right to rest. But Taoism suggests something revolutionary, that the deepest peace comes not from achieving more, but from needing less. Not from climbing higher, but from sinking deeper into presence, into stillness, into alignment. This doesn't mean you don't grow. It means your growth is no longer fueled by lack. It's not a desperate sprint toward worthiness. It's a natural unfolding from a place that already knows its worth. That distinction changes everything. When you act from lack, your effort is contaminated by fear. But when you act from fullness, your movement is clean, purposeful, effortless. Overexertion, by contrast, clouds perception. It makes you rigid, narrow, and reactive. You lose the ability to listen to your body, to your intuition, to reality itself. You become like a man trying to see through muddy water, thrashing to clear it, only to make it worse. Taoism teaches that clarity arises not from effort, but from stillness. Muddy water, Laozi wrote, let stand, becomes clear. You don't need to fight for insight. You need to stop disturbing the waters of your mind. That's how wisdom appears, not as a product of force, but as a gift of patience. Here's the irony. The more we chase clarity through ambition, the more we lose it. The harder we strive to become something, the further we drift from what we already are. But Taoism doesn't condemn movement or goals, it just asks, from where are they arising? But are you chasing because you believe something is missing? Or are you moving because something is overflowing? The answer reveals everything. One path leads to burnout, the other to peace. So here's the question: what are you exhausting yourself trying to become? And who told you that you weren't already whole? If you paused just for a moment, would anything truly fall apart? Or would you finally hear the wisdom that's been buried under all that noise? Because in the end, the Tao doesn't demand that you abandon your dreams. It only asks that you stop using them as weapons against your own peace. The ending that isn't how Taoism redefines success, fulfillment, and arrival in the world we built. Life is structured like a race. We start at the bottom, we climb, we conquer, and one day, if we work hard enough, sacrifice long enough, and endure more than anyone else, we arrive. That's the story we're told. That success is a destination. That fulfillment is a finish line. That once we've made it, we'll finally be able to relax, to breathe, to live. But Taoism quietly unravels that myth. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply asks, arrive where? And with that one question, the entire structure of our striving begins to collapse. Because there is no final arrival. There is no place where everything is finished, where all tension dissolves, where you become permanently whole. And the more we try to force that ending, the more we suffer. And fulfillment isn't waiting at the end of the road. It's woven into each step if we're awake enough to see it. Taoism doesn't offer a map to success, it offers a mirror. It shows us that the path is the destination, that what you're doing right now is your life, not a prelude to it. And if you can't find peace here, you won't find it anywhere. This is the most subversive idea in a culture addicted to progress, that the need to get somewhere is often the very thing that blinds us to where we are. Think about how many years you've spent waiting to arrive, waiting to be good enough, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the version of yourself that finally deserves rest, joy, or love. But Taoism whispers something terrifying and beautiful. There is no better version of you coming, but this moment, as it is complete. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real, because it's now, and that's all we ever truly have. Taoism redefines success by removing the goalpost entirely. It's not about reaching the top, it's about being in harmony with the present. That's why Lao Tzu said, "A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving." It's not nihilism, it's freedom. It means you're no longer chained to some imagined future. You're no longer postponing your life. You're no longer treating peace like a paycheck you haven't earned yet. You're free to rest right now, to live right now, and to be whole, not because you've completed the journey, but because you've stopped fighting it. This doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you stop growing against yourself. You stop climbing mountains just to prove you can. You stop measuring your worth in milestones. You stop needing the world's applause to feel real. And in that letting go, something radical happens. Your actions become lighter, freer, more effective. You're no longer trying to become, you're simply expressing what already is. And that is where true creativity, true innovation, true peace is born. So here's the final question. What if you never arrive? What if there is no finish line, no final version of you, no grand revealing of the real life you've been waiting for? Would that be a tragedy? Or would it be the greatest liberation of all? Because if there's no final arrival, then you're not late, you're not behind, you're not broken. You're just here, breathing, living, enough. And maybe that's the real Tao. Not a road that leads somewhere, but a way of walking that turns every step into home. Or a way of being so present, so aligned, that each moment becomes its own arrival. Not because you've stopped moving, but because you finally realized you were never supposed to fight life. You were supposed to feel it, all of it, without effort, without fear, just like the river, just like the cat, just like the Tao.